What's up? What's up? It's time for Done Way Past Funny with your host, G.D. Fenderson. Join us as we take a look back at the early works of seasoned comedians before they were seasoned with this week's guest, Alvaro Gamboa. It's time to get down and get dope with Done Way Past Funny. Hi, I'm G.D. Fenderson, certified forensic humorist. Thank you for joining us as we continue our interview with comedian Alvaro Gamboa. Enjoy. Man, that's all right. Well, another question. You've been doing comedy for 10 years. If you make it big enough that you're going to, somebody's going to want to do your life story, who do you want to play you? Not what cartoon character would you want to play you?
What cartoon?
Not what actor. Character? Fuck the actors. What cartoon player do you want to play you?
What cartoon character would I want to play in my biopic?
Yeah. Who do you want to portray you? Roger Rabbit. I'm just throwing names out there. You can pick whoever you want.
Cartoon character?
Yes. Yeah, any character you want.
Bugs Bunny, I guess, right? Like the Latin Bugs Bunny.
Yeah, he's pretty fucking funny, and he's got a good bite, good delivery. Yeah.
Yeah, like I feel like that's like the classic cartoon, right? I feel like Bugs Bunny would be a great pick. I would say probably Bruce Wayne if that's a cartoon character. Like,
well, it depends. If you're doing the animated series, sure, because he's not a real person. Yeah,
right, yeah. I feel like Bugs Bunny is like one of those like comedic inspirations for me, just overall being silly, like those cartoons still hit to this day because it's universal. Like silliness is universal. And so like if I could tell a truth bomb in a silly way and deliver it in a silly way, I feel like, that's like mission accomplished.
I think I'd like Daffy Duck only because he has the speech impediment thing going.
Right. I was thinking Daffy Duck, but I don't have a lisp, nor do I want to attain one.
Yeah, but his delivery, but he could add a dimension to your character that you don't have. You know what I'm saying? And also, he's gotten his face blown off, and his mouth winds up back here, and he talks up. He's been so abused, and I think. This is the first time I've thought of this answer for myself. I've never. These are questions that I usually say for something else. I just threw them out there because I like you. That's why I was hitting you with them. But Daffy Duck, I mean, he's so disrespected but he's funny. And I feel that way about comedians. A lot of times we've been through so much. We're so damaged in so many ways. And that's Daffy Duck. He's abused. He's been shot by Elmer Fudd over and over again. Like Bugs Bunny. I don't think Bugs Bunny's ever been shot by Elmer Fudd. I think he's been shot at. I don't know. I don't remember if he's ever been shot. Daffy Duck has been shot. Daffy Duck has been blown up.
He's taken a couple of clips to the face. Yeah.
Yeah, he's taken a few. Him and the Coyote, Wile E. Coyote.
Wile E. Coyote.
Yeah. They would make good comedians because they've suffered some shit. Roadrunner would make a good comedian. He hasn't suffered anything.
To make a Roadrunner would make a good Olympian. Outside of that, I don't see any funny coming out of that.
Yeah. He's almost like one of the comedians that aren't funny, but he would show up and he'd be there because he's. The Roadrunner to me would be like one of those comedians who's not a comedian, but he's got like 1 million likes on YouTube or Facebook or TikTok or something, and so he gets booked, and then they find out, wait a minute, okay, yeah, he's popular, but he's not funny. I think that's the Roadrunner. But
gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, but
so Matt Rife, basically. Matt Rife.
Yeah. I just learned who he was this year, and I only know about him because of Coffee with the Dog. If it weren't for Coffee with the Dog, I still would not know about Matt Rife because I don't know anybody that's ever mentioned him in like casual conversation out there.
His positive is that he does the crowd work stuff. He actually is doing like a special of crowd work. And like I get it, crowd work clips is like marketing at the end of the day. It's your resume. It's putting stuff out to entice the public. I would hope that everyone has a little bit of crowd work and a little bit of material in their bits in their sets. There are people that do 100% crowd work, and like I'm not saying that's what Matt Rife does. Yeah, I'm not saying that's what Matt Rife does. I don't know any I don't personally know any comedians that do crowd work, but I have seen comedians like do all crowd work sets. And like, you know, at some point, like there is like a magic and an allure to it, but at some point, like the allure wears off, you know, like when you're asking like every crowd and audience that you're at, like, hey, what do you do for work? How long you been married? When's the last time you
Yes,
got
I mean,
laid?
yes. So to me, that's to be honest, I'm not a big fan of crowd work, and I think that the comedians that use crowd work are basically lazy and on don't have good material, and they're waiting. They may have like one or two jokes, and they're waiting for someone in the crowd to say something that they can use in as to launch one of their jokes or
Hmm.
something.
Yeah, I've
I
seen that.
I know one comedian who is like tries real hard. He's been trying to do crowd work for like 6 or 7 years, and he just sucked at it. And even other comedians that tried to mentor him tried to talk him out of doing it. And he's like, he just wants to be a crowd work comedian, and he just sucked at it. And the last time I saw him, this is like years later, he still sucked at it. But because he's in with the right people, he still gets booked. But I don't think he'll ever be. Well, I'm not going to say that, but I don't do
Yeah,
crowd
bro.
work.
Each
I
to
don't
their
do
own.
crowd work. I do crowd control. See,
Yeah,
I engage with the audience, but it's under my terms. That's because
yeah,
my mentor told me when you're on stage, you're in control. You have the mic, you're in control. Don't give up your control. And
exactly.
and
Yeah,
if you
amen.
if you do your crowd work poorly, you're actually giving the audience permission to start taking control. They'll
You know,
start.
that makes perfect sense, GD. It's just that hearing you say crowd control doesn't really necessarily sound right. You know, I thought you were a black man before, but I'm realizing now you're a police officer. That sounds like
There
speaking
are
in
black
official
police
authority
officers.
for your status, right? I don't do crowd work. I do crowd control, sir. I'm gonna control this riot. Hey, don't you protest on this campus. Like,
No,
but
but
that is a good point. That is a good point because I feel like I have had to learn that in like Latin rooms, in urban rooms, and black rooms, where like at some point, bro, you're gonna lose this crowd if you suck. You're gonna lose them no matter how much material or crowd work it is. So like I feel like the way I structure it would be like if I have a bit, maybe a crowd work questions or topics
right.
interspersed between bits, or maybe to start it off and then go into a bit, or maybe end it with crowd work and peace out, kind of thing. Like crowd work again, it is a muscle, it is a tool and a resource for us to be using. And so like I embrace all these tools and resources. Who am I to shun anyone for using any tool or resource? Now if you suck, you garbage. If you hot garbage, you're getting booked. It sounds like your friend is hot garbage and he's getting booked.
Yeah.
But
Now,
overall, like I do appreciate the connectivity that happens, right? Like you're
right.
again, like it might be an impulsive thing, it might be something that's premeditated prior, where like you thought this out. Either way, you're connecting with the person one on one, like whether you're having premeditated conversations or you're riffing on the cuff and doing bits with your friends, like in the moment, like it's all about the connection and how can we facilitate that connection faster and hold it for longer.
Now, one of the things I've done, it depends. Like I can do like in bars, because when we do comedy, we don't always get to play clubs. Sometimes we get to play. We're playing bars, like you mentioned, a furniture store.
Sometimes you could be doing ambush bar shows. You know that those are super fun too. Ambush
Yeah,
shows.
yeah. Now I did. I was in Iowa, and it was a bar dinner thing because it wasn't they did comedy, but they didn't have a proper stage. So you're surrounded by tables, and you had your back maybe against a window or something, but it was like tables and stuff all over the place. And but the place was kind of rowdy, even though they were there, they knew the comedy was coming. It wasn't like a comedy setting, and so
That's an
when
ambush show, sir. You just described that perfectly. Yes.
so what I did when I saw that they were rowdy, what I did, and I grabbed a bunch of my business cards, and I went to the rowdiest tables, and I went over to them, and I'd give one of my cards and say, "Hi, I'm GD Fenderson. I'm going to be performing tonight." And I said, so, and that's it. I don't ask them to be quiet or anything like that. But one of the things I noticed is because I connected with them and gave them a card, when I got up there, they were like, shh, shh, shh. It's like they felt like their friend was up there. It's like I just taught
Right.
this guy, and so that's what I mean by crowd control. I have like a dozen different methods of controlling the audience.
Hell yeah. Hey,
You
that's a
know,
good method, man. I'm down for every method because like again, it's the connection, right? It's not just
yes,
being a professional, it's also being a human, right?
yes,
Like if it's an ambush bar show, most of the time no one there is getting paid. The bar patrons were not expecting a comedy show. And so like, they're just wanting to wallow in their pity and the drinks. But like at some point, if you connect with them and let them know, hey, I'm an actual human too, going through my own things, maybe we can connect and stuff. Like there is an opportunity there for connection, which again is comedy.
yeah. That's what I try. Like I said, I learned that from being a substitute teacher. I'm,
Nice.
well, I was sorry, a student teacher. I was not. I was a student teacher. That's when you're still in school with the other people, but you're good enough, or your grades are good enough that you are like the teacher's pet, and you can run the
Oh,
class. You can run the class sometimes. And I got to actually I was a substitute, but I was a high school student, and part of my psychology class was I would substitute at the middle school. So I would go over and I would I would run a class. And my thing there was I would find the bully, the rowdy kid who was in charge of all the other kids. I would make him my pet. And so he controlled the rest of the audience, the rest of the
yeah,
class.
that makes perfect sense. Yeah, if you hit the head, then the rest falls in position, right? Like
Yeah,
if you hit the
that's
head,
it.
the body will fall. You find the rowdiest rebels. Like I was a teacher too in a past life, and you
Oh,
just get the
okay.
most rambunctious bunch. You get the most rambunctious out of the boys. Hey, come here, man. You guys know what you're doing is ridiculous, right? Let's tone it down a bit. Recognize everyone's following you, right?
Yeah.
Even if they don't know, you make them aware, like consciously or subconsciously. You have a crew of people following these things that you're doing. So hey, if that's sometimes a food, like leading into a food fight or shushing a comedy show, that it's
Yeah.
either or. Like people will follow others, right? Like I feel like there's only one way to live life, and it's either being a follower or a leader. Sometimes you lead, sometimes you follow.
Well, in 10 years of doing comedy, I've never been heckled at a show. So,
Oh,
and I'm like,
can you call yourself a comedian then?
well, that's just it. A lot of people are like, well, you haven't suffered. It's like, I'm sorry, just because I preemptively strike doesn't, that's like saying, that's like yelling at a soldier. You've never been shot, you pussy. It's like, no, it's like I'm a smart, yeah, I go into battle, I do my job, and I come home safe. That's it. I'm sorry, I didn't get shot like you
Right.
guys.
And you know what? That you just brought up a good fucking point about comedy, bro. Nobody cares about your accomplishments. Nobody cares that you're a fucking shiner and you have all the purple hearts and medals and all that with all your valor. Everyone in comedy only cares about how much you've sucked, how much you've been in the weeds, how long have you been in the trenches
Yes.
for? You know what I'm saying? Like how long have you been in the suck for? Can you like sacrifice even more? Like no one cares about any of your medals and credits and all that. It's how rock bottom, how in despair, how much in despair have you gotten, right? And I don't like resonate necessarily with that, but people do that. People believe
Yeah.
in that way. Like you're not an actual comedian until you've suffered and you're penniless and you're and you're devoid of any familiar relationships and connections, right? It's kind of
Well, you
sickening. It's
slept
kind
you
of like
slept in your car to do a gig.
right.
You
You have
know.
a car? What the fuck? We walk places, bro.
Yeah.
We walk places out here, GD. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like it gets sinister to a point where it's like, this is like boarding onto S&M almost, where it's like how deep in the trenches can you be, bro? Like no one really cares about any of the happy-go-lucky stuff that we portray on stage.
Right.
Backstage, behind the curtain, when the veil is lifted and Oz looks at you, he's like, Oz is looking at you like, how much are you willing to suffer for this?
Well, like I said, I've never had the closest. I've never had a bad. I've never had one of those bad sets. Now I've had a bad few minutes. Okay, that I've had, and I think of like twice where I've had a bad few minutes. And one of them, I was trying something so different for me, so new, and it started to go sideways, and it took me like 2 minutes. Well, I don't know. To my wife felt like it was an hour, but it wasn't, because she was suffering much more than I was. I was like going, okay, that didn't work. What am I going to do here real quick? And it's like 30 seconds maybe, and and I'm like riffing for 30 seconds. Then I get my space, and I'm like, okay, I'm off and running again.
Oh,
Yeah, so I've had that, and the funny thing is, after the show, a couple of people came up to me and goes, "You're never going to do that again, are you?" And I'm like,
yeah.
"Yeah, I will. I'll just do it better. I've learned." I said, "I've
Exactly.
learned from that.
Right.
That's
Exactly.
it." I said, "This is all a learning experience." I said, "I'm going to go home and I'm going to watch this tape and I'm going to say, where did I lose it? What the fuck? Okay." And that's it. And I've learned. I mean, I may be a better comedian, but I've never had a bad set. It just hasn't happened. And I'm, you know, knock on wood or whatever. But I can honestly say that, I mean, my worst set was probably my first set, but even then I got a lot of laughs. But the parts that was bad was that it was supposed to have been a 5 minute set. I kept forgetting what else. It was my first time, and I kept forgetting what I was going to do next, and so I would riff for like 30 seconds or so until eventually I ran over the light. I was at 8 minutes and 49 seconds when I ended. It was only supposed to have been 5 minutes. Now, the only saving grace I had was that the person who went up, two people before me, I went up fifth. The person who went up third was supposed to do 5 minutes. Like I said, this is a paying audience. We did a comedy boot camp. So we did like 3 days of learning how to write jokes. And we all wrote like 5 minute sets and we rehearsed it and so forth. And this was we're performing before a headliner. There's a headliner who comes up after us, but it's a paying audience, and it sells out like every year because they're there to see the graduates of the new comedy class, to see who's going to be funny, who's going to die, crash and burn. They're hoping. So the guy who went third only did 2.5 minutes of his 5 minutes. So that's it. He was like, and we wrote 5 minutes worth of material. I don't know if he just all of a sudden got
Pros or
yeah,
something.
don't know, but he just like, or he just hit a good laugh and went, "That's it, I'm done." I'm done.
Yeah, that
Thank
happens.
you. Don't know, but he did 2.5 minutes. The guy after him, who went up right before me, he only did like 4.5 minutes of his five. And so I went up. I wrote 4.5 minutes worth of material, expecting 30 seconds worth of laughter over the 5 minute, 5 minutes time. I had a formula, and so, but I ran over to once I ran over 5 minutes. I think they graced me the time that the other people didn't use,
I guess so. Yeah,
and,
that
and
that
that's
that equates.
and
Beforehand, I
that.
thought you were just running the light to run the light, but you were filling time. It sounds like.
Well, I wasn't. No, I to them maybe, but to me, I ran the light because first of all, I in my mind I said, okay, this is 4.5 minutes worth of material. What I like write this, and I forget,
Mhm.
and I get lost here, so I riff like maybe 15, 20 seconds. And then I go, okay, I know what comes next. And then I do that material. So in my mind, as long as I'm doing this material, I've only done 4.5 minutes. But it was all the riffing I did in the middle of all this shit that made me run over. And
That's
my
where it
wife
gets you.
and my wife said the host was like behind the curtain right behind me. She says, and he was waiting for like 30 seconds to yank me off. And she says he was like there. He was going to grab me. And I didn't see it until like when I saw the video like a month later. And he's like, you can see his head. He's like Sandman. He's ready to yank me off, but I was still getting laughs.
He's in the corner just like this, like it's a fucking
Yeah,
stage.
and the only thing that saved me also is the fact that I was still getting laughs. I wasn't like
Right,
dying.
right.
I
That'll save you.
wasn't
That'll
dying.
save
I was just forgetting, and I got through my material. And like I said, and I ran over. And the other thing is, he said they kept saying, "Don't run over the light." And I remember now. Now I remember he told us we have a clock, and you can see the countdown clock, and you can see how much time you have left. Well, I got on stage, I forgot all about the clock.
you.
And then I saw the clock, and it already counted down to 5, and it's starting to count up from 0 again, and now it's at negative, like -1, and so I'm over.
Right,
But
right.
it didn't mean anything to me. I'm like, why does it say -1 minute? I don't understand. What?
It didn't register.
No, I'm like, why is that -2 minutes there? I don't understand. I'm like,
In my line of work, negatives are usually positives, right?
yeah, it's like, what's a -3 minutes and 49 seconds? What the fuck? Good
Yeesh.
night, everybody. Thank you.
Right. That's actually like I feel like that's the crux of comedy, bro. Like I feel like in my time, like I've learned that comedians, like time is blurred, right? Like time does not exist when you're bombing, right? Like a 30-second bomb could stretch into infinity. if
Yes.
you're not careful, right? It feels like you've been on this stage for what feels like lifetimes, right? So
Yeah.
that tends to happen with the adrenaline and the nerves. You might get shut down. You might, leave the stage early, like what happened to the to that comic. But like I feel like comedy, in essence, like we measure time in minutes and years. Like that, those are the only two increments of time that matter. How many years you've been doing comedy for, and how many minutes do you have for this set? Do you have enough minutes for this set? Do you have 5 minutes? Do you have your 10 minutes? Do you have your 15 minutes? Guest, your headline 30-minute spot. You have an hour special, 60-minute special, and it's really that, right? How many minutes do you got? How many years you been in this game, kid?
Yeah.
That's really
Yeah.
it.
Like I really appreciate you doing this with me. Is there anything that you need to? Well, I'm gonna let you know. It's going to be about a week or so, a week to 10 days before I put this out. So if there's anything you want to promote, actually, if there's something you want to promote, I'll just make a clip now and just promote it separate from this interview. But if there's anything you want to promote or anything you want to talk about that you didn't cover, we can do that. And also, whatever you do, don't forget to remind people how they can stalk you on social media.
Yeah, sure. So I'll say this one bit about comedy and then promo, and then I'll be out of here.
Okay.
The fact of the matter is, like, we're urban people, right? We're black and brown people. I've had to learn in comedy through like actual comics confronting me about the opinions of comedy. So like in that clip, right, I'm speaking about white people, but I'm also speaking about Spanish people, and I'm also speaking about black people, right? I've had
Right.
actual comics, both white and ethnic, come up to me and tell me that I'm speaking too much about Latin people, or I'm speaking too much about white people. I've had both instances with both groups of people, right?
Yeah.
And for me, like, I'm of the philosophy of, like, you are you at the end of the day. So
Right.
whatever you want to describe, whatever you want to talk about on stage, that's your own personal experience,
Right.
or your own opinion about something you've observed, right?
Right.
And so to like be approached by comics in that sense didn't necessarily sit right with me. It didn't hit me in a good spot. Like I understand the sentiment back then and now. Like I understand it, maybe, but maybe diversify, maybe not too much, cut out the bombs, keep it funny, keep it silly, keep it light, whatever. But like I recognize as a person of color in the industry, in the game, like the paths that we have for us are so different from the quote mainstream coded white pathways, right? Like I don't have those paths of access, right? And so like I'm very careful nowadays to like not be too crude, lewd, or lascivious, right? I'm not trying to promote any bad Latin stereotypes or bad representations, because I'm usually the token on lineups.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to like promote any ethnic slurring of people or kinds of things like of that nature. But ultimately, I feel like comedy is universal, whether you're speaking or reading it in English or any other language, right? So that's ultimately like what I feel like comedy is for. Like, granted, like I told you, like the first people that I saw doing comedy were people of color, were men of color, and like they're considered as the goats. They are considered as like the standard for what it is now. Is it like the blueprint that we should be adhering to all the
Right.
time? No, comedy changes. It's fluid. It's a spectrum, whatever you want to think of it as, right? This range of styles of presentations of comedy. And so like I'm open-minded to all comedy from all walks of life, from all forms of comedy.
Right.
And I hope to keep that way. And then also like ultimately, like, if you could perform in front of a black crowd, you should perform in front of a white crowd. You should perform in front of a Latin crowd. You should perform in front of a yellow crowd, Spanish crowd, Asian crowd, whatever it may be, right? Not to be racist, but that's really what it should be. So, putting myself up in front of as many diverse rooms as possible, I think, should be the goal for any comedian, and it's my goal. Um, and just making sure that it's truthful in spirit, right? Like,
Right.
jokes aren't true most of the times, but if it's truthful in spirit, if it has like a hint of resonant of truth, then by all means go for it, right? There is that philosophy of like I told you, being woke. I've been called woke. I'm not a fan of it. I don't know how you feel about it, but
To me,
if you
it's just
drop too many
I was raised. There's no such thing as a bad word, just a bad intention. So
right,
if you're
exactly.
calling me woke because you mean I'm aware of social injustice, I want to do something about it. Okay, fine. If you're calling me woke because you think I'm overly PC or something like that, then that's not accurate, and that's sort of annoying, you know. So it all,
Exactly.
yeah, it depends, what they, how they.
Right. And so with that in mind, like I make it a point to like support my brothers and sisters in this industry, in this game, whether they be black or Latin. Like I have an affinity towards that. But I have white comic friends, I have white comic buddies, both men and women that, we collaborate on. And I definitely am of the helpful variety of comic where like I'll throw a tag here or there. Are you open to feedback on this and that? So keeping myself in that open space, open mentality has been an uphill battle. That has been something that I've worked on, not necessarily like I worked on it for my life, but it translated into comedy, right? Because
Right.
it's life, right? So I feel like that's super important, right? Not to punch down, punch up, right? um bring awareness to the injustices of the world in a way where like it's silly, informative, educational, and funny. That's how
Now,
I feel.
one of the things you had mentioned just now was that about how comedy has changed and comedians have changed, the styles have changed. But the other thing that has changed is the audience's expectations of comedy. Because
Yes.
at one point comedy was like the way you spoke truth to power and you addressed
Yes.
social issues, and now and also so that's still, so that in my mind that should still be true, and how you bring up social issues so that people can become aware of them without being hit over the head of it with it. But also some people expect comedy be their way of yelling comedy from, they want to be comedians from the audience, that some people expect that now, and I think that's,
Yeah.
yeah.
No.
So
Your
there's some.
your audience, your job is to listen. I had a heckler one time after the show. We were hanging. He heckled everyone's set. He was like, "Oh no, I felt like I was supporting the I felt like I was supporting the show with my supplementary jokes." And we all looked at him like, don't do that. Just don't. Like I had to like put on my manager voice and just be like, no, that's not cool, dude. It doesn't matter if you're doing it to a white person, Spanish person, or brown person. Just shut up and listen. Laugh when we tell you to laugh. If we ask you a question, speak when spoken
Right.
to. Damn it! Like,
Now, I was doing a show in North Carolina, and I was one of 7 comedians on that thing and I was in the middle, but I was the only black comedian on this thing. There were no,
as
there
tends
all
to
the other
be the
comedians,
case.
were white. They were male and female, but they were all white.
Mm-hmm,
And there was
mm-hmm.
this one woman in the back. Now these are all paying audience members. They all paid to be in here. And there's a woman in the back. She starts heckling the first person. She starts heckling the second person. The host comes up and addresses her. She's heckling the host, and he can't get her to shut up. And the audience starts yelling at her. And so and this is general seating. She sees an empty seat in the front. She moves up to the front row, and now she's heckling the next few people from the front row. Front row. No, she's from, sorry, her Scooby Doo for some minute. Front row.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's
she's
exactly
not,
what my mind thinks.
yeah.
Uh-oh.
So
Here
now
comes
she's
Karen.
in a front row, and she's heckling from there, and the audience is telling her, "Shut up, be quiet," and she's like, "Fuck you, I paid my money," and so she heckled everybody, and then I get up there, and she shuts up. I didn't say anything to her. I just walked up and she shut up. And I'm doing my material and I realized she's not heckling me. And I was ready to be heckled. She wasn't heckling me. So I looked at her and I said, no, 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 no. I'm the only black on this show. You're going to treat me like you do the white comics and you're going to heckle me, damn it. I said, I want to be treated just like all the white comics. So you're going to heckle me. And she didn't heckle me. And so I'm like, come on. I said, you are so racist, treating me differently than the other white comics. And she would not heckle me. This is a white woman. It's not like she was a black woman and heckling. No, this is a white woman heckling. And so I got to do my whole set unheckled. And I was the only one. And the thing is, this gave the other comics such a false sense of security because they thought that she would shut up. I got
Nope.
off. The next comedian comes up and she starts heckling again for the rest of the fucking
Wow.
show. And
It was almost like you were invisible to her.
yeah, it's like I don't hear anything else. Is there something up there? I'm waiting. Yeah, but she would not heckle me. And I
It's comedy, man. That you'll have 1,000. Well, like the goal is to have 1,000 more of those experiences, right? 1,000 more experiences in front of audiences and crowds. And yeah, that's my ultimate goal at the end of the day is to get heckled by a white woman, right?
So, well, I appreciate you doing this with me.
Yeah,
And
GD, thank you for having me. I appreciate the time here. It's been a fantastic opportunity. Thank you so much for the time. I'll let everyone know you could follow me at Alvaro Jokes Gamboa on all socials, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. Go ahead and follow me at Alvaro Jokes Gamboa on YouTube as well. At the moment, I am the podcast host for. I am the host for my podcast, All Growth Podcast, which is in it's in hiatus right now at the moment, but you can go ahead and tune into old episodes at All Growth Podcast, where all podcast platforms are streamed. Check out those episodes. It's fantastic, and we got some heat coming on the way.
so when's it coming back? Do you know?
I don't know, as a matter of fact. See, what happened was that I would love to do like this right here. This is great, but when I started my podcast in the recession in the pandemic. I started my podcast, and I had my old laptop that was like 10 years old,
Wow.
that like got me through school, that I was like on the like teetering on the fence, right? Just barely hanging by a thread. And so I would do podcasts on it. It would take me days to edit episodes. It would take me days to export and upload. And at some point, my whole system went on the fritz. I'm like, my whole system like shut down, and so I have to like figure out how I can rescue that content and redistribute it and put it back out. I feel so bad because I invited my friends and guests on, and I was like, I'm just sitting on 15 episodes. GD, I feel so
Wow.
ashamed to say out loud. like the system I have right now does not support any of the above. So like I'll figure it out. I love what you and Matt and Mind Dog do here. This is awesome. I think streaming is the wave. I would definitely love to do more of these. So please book me for your shows and your podcast interviews and all your interviews at Alvaro Jokes Gamboa at gmail.com. Reach out. Please recommend and refer me to all your comedian friends. GD, I appreciate the time here. And
Sure.
yeah, I'm super thankful, super grateful for comedy.
Oh, you had mentioned that you were interested in writing sketches and stuff. Now
Yeah.
there are a ton of, I should say, like I used to write sketches for Politipod, and they are a decidedly left leaning political satire sketch thing. They do like a half an hour show every 2 weeks, a half an hour podcast
Okay.
every 2 weeks. And like I said, I stopped doing it because I had so many pans in the fire, and my wife says you've got to slow down. You've got to give something up. And so I've been doing that for quite some time. And so but one of the things that they do, first of all, they don't. I don't think they have any. No, I know it. They have no Hispanic talent on there at all. So they could use
I
the
just wrote
flavor.
that down. I'll definitely check it out.
Yeah, they could use the flavor. And
They can use the sazon. Hell yeah.
yeah, they could use the flavor. So and anyway, so you gotta, sister, you gotta go. So let's tell you what. So check out Politipod, and if I hear about any other things, I'll just shoot you a line. We know
Yeah.
we're good friends now.
Thank you, GD. I appreciate it. Good friends to me too, man. I thank you so much. Thank you for the time here. It's been amazing. And wishing you well on this journey. Hope to see you again soon.
You will, my man. You will. All right. Take
Oh
care.
yeah. Good to hear from you, man. You have a good day.
You too. Later.